All right, I think we can start. Good afternoon to everyone who joined in. I guess there would be more people joining in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but it's 4 o'clock and we should get going. Um, First of all, before we start, um, I would like to introduce our guest today. Uh, I hope everyone is able to see the presentation. I'm sharing a presentation so that we can follow the structure, and we also ask the right questions to Debashish. So Debashish, by the way, Debashish Ghosh, he is the Vice President and India HR Head of Berkadia, which is Berkshire Hathaway and Jefferies financial group company. Of course, I would be asking further questions so that we can all get to know Debashish Ghosh better. He has had an illustrious career. Um, so, if you have a look at what he does at present, but also what he's done in the past, he's been Assistant Vice President HR in Genpact. He has 2 decades of experience, and he's been educated in IIM Calcutta and XRI. And I was really impressed to see the licenses and certifications. Impressed because I'm from a learning and development domain, and when I see someone so interested to learn, I feel really excited, really happy. So he's a certified NLP practitioner. He's a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, also certified facilitator from the Arbinga Institute. Certified MBTI practitioner of steps 1 and 2, certified DISC practitioner, Six Sigma Green Belt, and train the trainer from Dale Carnegie Training, instructional design and facilitation skills. He's also certified global talent management leader from Talent Management Institute and SHRM. Most of us also know about this, the senior certified professional SHRM SCP from SHRM. All right, so Debashish, welcome to HR Speak Live. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we can begin off now. I think I can see more than 30 participants already, and a lot of people are joining in. So welcome, Debashish, to our live talk show. Sorry. Yes.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. You almost flattered me with your introduction. Thank you very much for that, Zubin. Before I start, I think a lot of us do the thank yous later, but I want to do the thank yous before I forget or before we run out of time. One is to thank NHRDN Kolkata Chapter for inviting me to the HR Speak. When I look at some of the speakers, some of the previous participants of this forum, they have had like fantastic careers, great individuals who have been here where I am today, and it's really flattering and very, very humbling as well at the same time. I also appreciate NHRDN Kolkata Chapter's contribution to the field of HR and furthering our the function as a whole. So big thank you to them. Thank you to you too, Zubin. I told you before that I'm a big admirer of your work, of what you do. So glad to be talking to you personally. I just hope that you not ask me too many tough questions. Be easy on me. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants in this forum today who have joined in for the webinar. I think each one of you are very, very accomplished in your own right. So while I'm being invited here, but frankly, my hidden agenda is to really learn from all of you. So thank you for joining. I also want to mention that I feel extremely blessed and extremely fortunate that I'm here, safe and healthy. My family next room safe and healthy, despite the unprecedented times they're living in right now. And I really hope that everybody on this webinar is safe and healthy as well. And I wish well to you and all your loved ones. So again, thank you, Zubin, for inviting me. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have for me.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. And before I ask you the first question, I would also like to set the rules in place for all our participants. So you might have seen that everyone's muted, and that's for a reason. There are a lot of people in this session, and if more people start speaking, it becomes a little challenging for us overall. So first of all, the discussion will take place for around 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we will keep for questions. So any questions that anyone has, you could type in the chat box. Um, if if I find that your question should be asked immediately, then even during our own discussions, I will ask those questions to Debashish. Also, apologies in advance that we may not be able to take all the questions based on the time that we have. So we will try to take as many questions as possible within the given time frame. So that's the basic thing, and that's it. So let's start off, Debashish. And of course, I'm not going to ask you tough questions at all.
Thank you.
These are all questions which are related to your life, your career. That's what I prefer asking. And what I've done this time, since we're doing this live and we have the facility of using slides, so I'll put up the questions on the screen as well, so the audience can also see the questions while you are answering them.
Okay.
So the easiest question of the day is this. Please, could you, and a brief introduction, both professionally and personally, as much as you would like to share.
Sure. This is a common question that I ask all the new interview candidates, and I never thought it would be so difficult. Something like, tell me something about yourself. So yeah, I'll make an attempt. So let me go to personally, because professionally, I think you have shared a bit in your previous slide, and I'll come to little bit of that later. But personally speaking, so I grew up in a small town in Assam, and in a very large Bengali joint family. And I personally believe that your upbringing and your childhood have a lot of impact on you as you grow up. And it certainly had an impact on me, both the fact that I'm from a joint family and also that I'm from a small town. Um, as far as my family is concerned, I think that the Indian joint families are almost like the prototypes of an organization, in a smaller scale. So you have those CEOs, you have those who really drive the culture through being a strict disciplinarian, very strong on the values, have the right sense of deep sense of right and wrong. Then you have a CFO who manages the finances, very stingy, doesn't let you spend an extra penny. You have an HR guy who actually resolves all the disputes in the family. Um, there are also some good performers who are full of attitude. Like my dad was one of that, and everybody found it very difficult to manage him. So I think very early in my life, I got a fair bit of sense about how a organization is run, right? That's the way I see it. So had a great upbringing in a joint family that way, and my first lesson of management was actually seeded in that initial few years of my life. Um, Also, as I mentioned, I grew up in a small town, and the advantage of, I think, what I felt, this is my personal view, the advantage of growing up in a small town is that you have a very strong sense of community. You practically know one another, so there's a great sense of interpersonal skills that you develop over a period of time, and also the fact that you learn to live with little privileges. So you have to make do things more things with less. So those kind of experiences also as a young individual helped me to grow in my career. Eventually had some impact on my career. So 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 for the that is about where I grew up, and obviously for the last 19 years, I've been in Hyderabad. So this is my current bhumi, as they say. Um, I live with my mom, my wife, and our daughter, who is 14 years old. So I actually live with three generations of people, you know. So there is a baby boomer, and there is a Gen Xer, and there is a Gen Z, as they call it, and all from the opposite gender. So you can understand that I'm learning every day, right? So that has been my pretty much my personal journey. As hobbies, I like reading books. I like to keep fit. Broadly, that's what my hobbies are. Um, Coming to my professional background, again, some of it is was already shown in the previous slide. You had also shown my LinkedIn, shared my LinkedIn profile with the participants, so some of them would have already seen it. But interestingly, I started my career as a hotel management profession. I studied hotel management, then I did my 3 years of diploma, and then worked in hospitality for 2 years before I changed gears and moved to, at that time, they call it as a call center, or right now BPOs. So there was a shift that happened, but that experience of working in hotels also, helped me learn a lot. Um, all I can say about my professional career, Zubin, is that I have been very, very fortunate of working with people, some great people, some great organizations, and some great coaches and mentors. And all of these shaped me into who I am today as a professional.
All right. Thank you so much, Debashish, for that introduction. Very interesting when you said that you live with three generations, all from the opposite gender. Um, I think many of us are also in that situation. Same with me. I have my parents, my wife, and my son. Although my parents are not with me right now because they were in Delhi with in my sister's home, and they got stuck because of the sudden lockdown.
Oh,
But
okay.
I completely understand what it means to live with three generations. All right, so moving on, and from the introduction bit, and I would like to ask you something from your experience in the last 2 years. So first of all, this is a question, and I'm also putting up this question on the screen so that everybody can see it. Could you share your experience and learning on how you worked on transformation and change management from a services based to a product development company in Berkadia?
Sure. Um, Zubin, I think first of all, the transformation goal for Berkadia is much larger in scale, and not just moving from a solely financial based company to adding products to our portfolio. That's number one. I think it is not about adding a revenue line to our servicing portfolio. Our vision, Berkadia's vision, really is to build, is to really redefine the industry. And that's when you go to Berkadia website, you will see that we want to redefine the industry with long-term investments in people and technology. And we say in that order. We say we invest in people and then technology. And the reason we see that as a transformation journey, we say that is very simple because there is a McKinsey study, and I think all of us are aware of it, saying that, of all the transformation journeys that we see, I have seen in the past, like only 30% of them are become successful. The rest 70%, of course, fail. And that happens across all sectors or industries. I think, and they say in the study, saying that the reason that happens because the leaders and the organizations fail to get the people on board about this journey, and they actively start resisting that change, right? And the culture change does not happen because of that. Organizations also make the mistake of focusing too much, I think, on the employee behaviors and competencies, right? There are elaborate training programs being done to improve somebody's behavior so that they completely come on board and start behaving the way that we want them to behave, and want them to be really transformed individuals. I don't think it works that way. So keeping that in mind, at Berkadia, our focus has been not really focusing on the behavior, but really on the mindset of our employees. When I say employees, including my own mindset, and that is very, very important. Because see, behaviors without the right mindset has no use. And we usually give the example of a rubber band, right? So it's like you can stretch a rubber band, it's a behavior, but if you leave it, it snaps back to its place. So if your mindset does not change, behavior is not sustainable. Um, I also give a very common example of to differentiate between a behavior and a mindset. What we are trying to drive really is that in the current situation, let's take this example of the current situation. All of us are now required to wash our hands maybe 10 times a day because because there's a fear that if you don't do that, you'll infect the virus, right? And my to my daughter, my wife says that if you don't wash your hands, you'll not get your food today. So for me, it is a fear factor. For her, a different motivation altogether to do it. So there is like in companies you have the carrot and stick policy, right? So that's behavior, right? You're driving it by doing a carrot and stick policy. But what if I don't change my mindset? What might happen is that once this storm gets over, I might come back to the same behavior, which is not washing my hands. So therefore, the focus at Berkadia for all the people and cultural transformation is that focus on the mindset. And we call this mindset as Berkadia way. The way we specifically define mindset is that it is an ability to it's a little lens, right? Like imagine a glass in front of you, and you put on that glass, and when you do that, you're able to see your own needs and objectives and challenges, and others' needs, objectives, and challenges, so that you collaborate better, and then do that cultural change, right? So that has been the focus, and that although we are in that journey still, it is far from being complete. We started this about 2 years back, and what we have made some fantastic progress because of this. I know my mindset has got changed because of this Berkadia way. Second point, and that's my first learning. Second learning that I had was that I feel that besides culture, for all transformation and change management programs to be successful, there has to be complete leadership commitment, right? If we don't have that, we're just fighting a lost battle. In Berkadia's case, we have been very, very fortunate that our leaders are completely committed towards this transformation journey and towards the Berkadia way, as we call it. And as I said, because of those two things, like focusing on the culture and the mindset and deep leadership commitment, we are already able to see those changes. So this has been in my career, I think the biggest transformation project that I have driven has been fantastic learnings. But as I said, the journey is still on.
All right, thank you so much. I quite liked the way you compared the rubber band. I never thought about this, although it's something that connects very well with what you have said. And I think bringing about behavioral change, and you've hit the nail on the head, really. Um, if there's no mindset change, then there is no behavioral change. I mean, there are external changes that we might create, which is why we might change certain behavioral skills, but not behavior itself. So
Yeah.
that definitely goes down to changing the mindset itself. So which is much deeper than the surface that we keep on scratching really most of the time.
And and just to add to that, Zubin, you have been a lot of us in this forum are part of learning and development. We do this. I know you do this day in and day out. How many times our clients or stakeholders wants magic from us, right? That you put them to your training session, Zubin is taking it, the person comes out in a totally transformed individual. That does not happen, right? There's a lot of things that goes into learning and motivation of an employee. I think the foundation of that is mindset of that person. So that is what you are trying to get into.
Absolutely, absolutely. So here's my second question again on the theme of experience that you've had in the last 2 years. So how do you identify behavioral competencies that drive business performance? What is your take on this?
So I think there are many ways of doing it. I'm talking from my experience as I've done a lot of L&D. I'm obviously a HR professional, and L&D comes with it. Again, many ways of doing it. There are some commonly used competency frameworks, as we call it, that are very, very effective in this regard. These frameworks help you to logically, step by step, through a series of actions, build the competencies, and get a and define those competencies as to how those competencies should look and feel in the workplace, right? So there are tried and tested ways of doing that. Um, but in my own experience, and I have had mixed success in a long career. So I can't say that I've been successful in everything that I did. Of course not. That's far from reality. In my experience, Zubin, as HR people, even before we start thinking about building a framework and a system around competency, what's really, really important is to sit down with the stakeholders and understand what the business is really trying to achieve through that, right? That's fundamental. The nature of the business goals, right? What you're trying to achieve, whether they are short-term or long-term, should determine the behavioral competencies of your workforce. Let me give an example that I had faced myself, and that was a personal learning from me. So I had a situation where I was given a responsibility in HR of building a competency framework for a group of sales people, sales guys. Now, suppose you are in a publicly listed corporation, right? You are a listed company, and then your primary focus is to meet quarterly sales targets, right? It's a short-term goal. You go quarter by quarter. The typical competencies that you would need from a salesperson is to be very good in persuasion skills and hard negotiation skills, right? That's what typically you look at, right? On the other hand, another spectrum of that is if your organization is focused on building long-term relationship with your customer, right, then the competency of the sales guy should be around emotional intelligence and consultative skills. Because, this is my learning, because when I tried to mix it up, it did not happen, right? For the specific business objectives, you need to have specific competencies, even the same group of people. One more learning that I had was that to ensure that all these behavioral competencies are really displayed in a true sense of, in true letter and spirit, it is important that your performance management system talks to these. It should be competency based to a large extent, right? So in this example, my learning was that it does not matter whether the salesperson met his targets. I mean, when I say it does matter, but not everything, right? So numbers are very, very important, but how you meet the target is also very, very important. In my case, my organization was looking at a long-term relationship with a client. We are trying to build EI, we are trying to build consulting skills. But some of our sales guys were really those hard negotiators or hard, had these hard persuasive skills, very aggressive in their nature. So while we won some short-term deals, but long-term we lost some customers. So that was what my learning has been. And since then, I always look at the business needs, what they are trying to achieve, and then specifically build my competencies around it so that my actual performance with the business needs are driven. Does that answer your question, Zubin, to an
Yes,
extent?
yes, yes. It
Oh,
does. In fact, it does more than answer my question. In fact, you've given a lot of examples and analogies which were very useful. I'm sure we're all listening and understanding based on the real life experiences and examples that you're sharing. I think that's the best part about the answer that you gave. So now I'll move on to. I don't know if this is tougher for you, but have you taken risks in your career? What are the risks that you have taken in your career? Would love to know.
yeah, it's a tough question. One of those tough questions that you ask. So I think I think Zubin that the way let me take a step back to answer before I answer this question. The way I see careers and career decisions is that I believe that whenever you are when it comes to career, there has to be an element of risk because otherwise I'll tend to think that either I am playing too safe or don't want to come out of my comfort zone, right? But the biggest risk that I've taken really, if I think about my long-term career for the last 2 decades, has been my two major career switches. So first one, as I mentioned briefly, is that when I started my career as a hospitality professional. I worked there for 2 years. I studied hotel management, but then I actually switched careers and moved to a BPO organization. At that time, it was call centers, right? I completely changed my domain and changed my entire career path, so to say. Right. Another change that happened. It's the first switch that I had taken a risk in my career. The next risk was when I switched from an operations domain to an HR domain. When I decided that HR is best for me and therefore I take a risk and move to HR. Now, why do I call it a risk? I mean, obviously, when I look back, things fell in place, and I'm where I am today. But nevertheless, when I took those decisions, those were very very risky, right? In both my existing careers at that point, right, either in the hospitality or then in 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 a BPO, right, in the operations rather. I think I was doing really really well. I was getting my right performance ratings. My promotions were done on time. I was valued and recognized for my work. In fact, a lot of my well-wishers, who even I call for my mentors, they actually advised me against making those moves. And I don't blame them for that because at the time, for a lot of them, it did not make much sense because it was a bit of a risk, right? Because I was living a full-fledged career in hospitality in the first instance and doing something which is like nobody knew what it was, just that you have to stay all night and make calls to your customers. That's what call centers meant at that point of time, like back in 2001, almost 2 decades back. Did not make sense to people really. In the second case, also switching from operations to HR, didn't make sense to me to many because you're moving from an operations role, which is which was apparently seen as something can give you a vertical growth really fast. And I was actually getting those promotions on time. Now you're moving parallelly, I think slightly declining rate where you take a back seat, your career takes a back seat, the rate of growth might slow down. And HR was anyway seen as a thankless job. So I think both these two switches were very, very risky. But I'm glad that I took that decision because things worked out for me.
All right, thank you. In fact, I was just looking through the chat window and I found that there were a few questions, and I believe like one of the just just now I saw a question from Debanjana Ghosh about the effective process to overcome different risks and how this process enhances career development. I think somehow the experience that you've shared answers that question. Uh, because the process of overcoming different risks, I don't know how you would you like to add something to this? Did you have a process, or was it a conscious calculated decision and you calculated all the different factors and you knew that this risk was worthwhile? And is it, I think the question also is about career, as to do you think taking these risks is good for your career and developing your career?
Sure. Um, yeah, I have a few thoughts on that. I'm sorry, I missed the name of the person who asked the question. I can't see the chat box so well. So, uh, Dipanjan,
Debanjana Ghosh.
Dipanjan. Yeah, I think it's a great question, and because it's about careers and about risks as well. So one thing is that it is very important for us to differentiate between a risk and a gamble. So I took a risk. I did not gamble. Was it calculated? Did I think about the pros and cons? I did, right? I mean, you can't foresee the future, but you take the decision based on what is available, information available to you, which I did that. We call this calculated risks. Risks sometimes fail, sometimes succeed, a different thing altogether, right? So yes, I did measure my options before I took that decision, right? And decision was completely mine, even though I heard people, but decision was mine. That is important. It is important not to overthink and not do it. Then I think I spoke about things like, are you becoming too comfortable, right? Can you come out of a comfort zone or not? So that becomes your deciding factor. Um, the way I see careers broadly is that might be I'll spend a couple of minutes to this. Is I know I have different views on things as career. Is that in my opinion, everyone, is that things like career planning and this climbing the corporate ladder, those things does not make any sense to me in my personal experience. I think those things are misnomers. I don't think we can plan your career, because if you can take a next move, but when I'm talking about careers which can span for 20, 30, sometimes 40 years, you can't plan that. I have not met a single CEO or CHIO who said that, what, they 25 years back, I exactly planned to be a CXO today. And this steps. It does not happen that way. Careers are not made by strictly, by making a very, how do we call it, a very foolproof plan and it's adhering to the plan, that way. It doesn't work. The careers are made by making a plan, of course. You should have a plan, but by being adaptable and making changes whenever the plan demands to do that. You know, you have to be adaptable. You have to be okay to make some changes, take a different route if required. Careers are made by seeking new opportunities and by being ready for those opportunities and not by being blindsided by the new opportunities, right? Same with the career ladder, as they say. It's a misnomer. You cannot, careers are not one dimensional vertically you're going up, right? It is not even diagonal, it's not even, they call it parallel, right? It's not even parallel. One analogy that I give for careers, and I was thinking about it the other day when I start my car. Of course, now I cannot start with quarantine, but I drive to office every day generally, right? Before I do that, generally I switch on my GPS, because there are 3-4 routes to go to my office from my home, and every day there is shorter route that can take me there. GPS tells you exactly where to go, right? So though I know my destination, right? I still take the help of a GPS because I need to know which path of the four is the best for me that day, and I change my decision. I also am aware that sometimes GPS says that this path will take you to your office 5 minutes faster. But if I know that this shortcut will actually, a lot of potholes on the road, there'll be a lot of, what do you call it? There may be more traffic jam, narrow roads, and I might dent my car. I do not take the road. So you make those conscious decisions, right? Through a GPS. But I think GPS for me, it's a very personal example. It's more relevant than a corporate ladder. How do I take decisions of career? Very personal. The way I have made decisions, I look at three things really. One is that, and really, when I'm moving to a new role completely or changing jobs, three things I look at. Now, first thing, three questions I really ask myself. First question is, what are the new and different skills I'm adding to my kitty as a professional? That's number one, right? Number two, what impact will my role have on the organization? That's number two. Number three is that what is the long-term vision, of the company, and does the culture of the company support that long-term vision? Now, if the answers to these questions are positive, I'm satisfied with the answers, I make that career move. So that's the way really I have planned my career. This is not a gospel. Everybody has different ways of doing it, but this is my personal way.
Right, right. Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. I think it's more than clear now for the Vanjana. And the last part that you said, that it's not a gospel, everybody has their own way. But I really liked the example of the GPS as well. We always have a plan, but we do have to adapt to the present circumstances. And nobody planned for this virus situation and this lockdown, for example. So we will have to adapt accordingly. All right, so I'll now move to a question which is hopefully not as difficult to answer. This is about a notable memory. So, what has been the most memorable moment or event in your career?
Okay. Most of the memories that stay on with us, at least with me, let me speak for myself, um, are from the childhood when you were very, very young. So if you'd allow me, Zubin, I'll just want to share a memory that I have and something which has an impact on me even now. This is for my personal life, not on my career.
Sure, sure.
So when I was very young, that is, we used to have this TV serial called Ramayan, which used to come in TV, Doordarshan, Sunday morning. Some of you were very young, not even born at that point of time. Talking about, I think, mid 80s, right? I was barely about 10, 12 years old at this point of time. So what happened was that our family was slightly more well-to-do compared to the people in the neighborhood. So in the locality, ours was the only TV at that point of time. So every Sunday morning, there'll be at least 200 people from the neighborhood coming and sitting in front of the TV and watching Ramayan for the next 1 hour. And I used to be very proud of it because it is my house, my TV and whatnot, right? A pride moment for me. And a lot of these people who came to see the serial, they actually came at least an hour before to sit in the front. Otherwise, last guy had to stand in the back, and from there you could barely see anything. So I was very smart, and I never came at the beginning or 1 hour before. It was obviously my house and our TV, right? I used to come at the end and just push people around and just sit in the front, which has the best view of the TV. So I did this for a couple of weeks. I remember on the third week, I guess, I I I I see I was sitting and just this TV was about to start, and I could sense a nice tap on my shoulder from the back. I turned around and I see my J2. J2 is, some of you know, I mean, a lot of people have been Bengalis here. They're my father's elder brother, who I was talking about the CEO. He was like the CEO of the family. So Jetu taps me on my shoulder and tells me that, can you come back? Can you come with me at the back? So I was surprised and I go with him and we walk down to the back of the people who are standing. And he told me, I've been noticing two things for the last 2 weeks. That you are coming pretty late and then sitting in the front, pushing everybody out. Why would you do that? I said, Jetu, this is our TV, our house. And therefore, I felt it was extremely okay to do that. So he said, no, just because it was your TV and your house, it does not give you, any right that you should come 1 hour late and sit in the front, right? That is not a fair thing to do, right? From today, if you want to watch the TV, I want you to come 1 hour early and then be seated in that first seat and then watch the TV. Otherwise, you're not going to watch the TV. Today, you stand here and watch the TV for the next 1 hour. That incident at that moment, of course, I was, and I was Jetu's pet. He loved me like crazy, right? And when he said that, the world came crushing down on me, frankly. I never expected that to happen. I felt let down, not loved, insulted, might be. And I remember standing there, watching, rather not watching and crying the entire day. Of course, I was a kid. I forgot everything. But when I look back at that incident, even now, it teaches me something very, very important. Is that you know you might have power, you might have position, or even privileges, but that does not entitle you for having everything in life. That you have to earn everything. So that was the lesson that from my childhood that actually stayed with me, and I'm trying to follow it as of now. So that is a memorable moment that stayed with me forever.
All right. I think this is a story that will stay with me forever now. Such a wonderful lesson that it might be your home and your TV, but that does not entitle you to push everyone away and go in front. There's a very, very deep and strong message in this. I hope you'd allow me to tell this story when the opportunity arises and I can tell others about this story.
Absolutely. If somebody finds it useful, absolutely. Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people here who've heard the story would be able to use the story to tell others. And I think the learning is so deep uh, that this should be told. Maybe we've all had a lot of experiences similar to that, but I think this really stands out as a story that should be shared.
Sure.
So I think you've already told us initially itself about your hobbies and interests, what you do when you're not working. I don't know. Should I ask you this question again? Is there something very interesting or specific that you might want to talk about?
No, I think that way, see, again, I like reading and like to be fit. Weekdays, Zubin, are very, very straightforward. We probably get about 2 hours and 1 hour of reading, and there might be an hour of working out. Um, you know, so that's one. It's pretty, standard. Weekends are really when we get to spend more time with the family. That's something I don't call it a hobby or interest, but that's surely that I look forward to it. I usually go for my long runs on a weekend. I've started liking, you know, running a lot. I plan to run a full marathon next year around this time, and I also spend some time in my self development on reading a few things on my self development on a weekend. I like to travel, but obviously it is not something I get to do very regularly at this time. Definitely not. But don't travel as much as I want to, but I surely like to travel. That's my other interest or hobby, as you might call it.
Okay. All right. I'll just ask you one question on this. When you said you spend time on personal development, and I heard you say that you read books. So, what kind of books do you read? Can you suggest a couple of books that you might have read in the recent past or you're reading right now, maybe?
Yeah, couple of books. There are many actually. Two books that comes to my mind, and I think why I'm saying two here is because I think it's kind of relevant to this group here. That if you have not read, I would recommend two books for the HR fraternity. One is the book called um, Drive, and the full name is Drive: The Surprising Truth That Motivates Us. It's a book by an author named Daniel Pink. If you want to know anything about what motivates employees, read this book. Just one book would be enough, at least to start with. So, Drive by Daniel Pink. The second book that I would recommend, again, there are many, but second book I think is a book by Dr. Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called Mindset, and that book talks about a concept called growth mindset, and completely it'll change your perspective about the way you look at talent and development and learning in organization. So for there are many of them, but specific to this group, I think Drive and Mindset are the two books I will surely recommend to everyone.
All right. Thank you so much for those recommendations. I'm sure many people have already taken notes. Drive is a book that I have read. Mindset I haven't, so that would now be added to my list.
Okay.
All right. So now coming to the present situation, I had to ask this question to you because this is a question that comes to us all the time, like considering the present situation. What are your views on dealing with the present situation as an HR professional? Uh, your views. I mean, nobody has a foolproof answer right now, but we're just looking for views and perspectives. What are your views on how to deal with the present situation?
Yeah, Zubin, yes. Thanks for saying that. I think no one knows, right? I'm also um, based on whatever I've seen in the recent past, and I also follow a lot of people who has obviously more knowledge than me, far more knowledge than me, right? And if I have to extrapolate their views and my own experience of being in as an HR head, working in organizations, I think fundamentally, I'll quickly run through it. Fundamentally, there are four factors post that COVID will impact as far as HR practices are concerned, right? Four factors, and they'll fundamentally change the way we do things with HR in the organizations. One is the workplace flexibility and remote working, right? It will completely change the way we look at work hours, the 9 to 5 shifts, 40 hours, a week, um, performance management through supervision. Some of our laws need to get changed as well, because our laws defines workplace as only office. So workplace, the way we define workplace is fundamentally going to change everything, right? So that's number one impact that will going to happen. Second impact will be the technology and data, right? How it will impact us is that so first let me talk about data, right? So one is that we as an HR community have lots and lots of access to lots and lots of data, right? Um, so what will be expected from us going forward is to really make sense of that data, do real analytics, and then come with insights and prescriptions on those data, right? Do a lot of predictions based on that. Because you have to understand that while investing in technology is important, but when companies come out of that, they won't be having too much money to invest in technology. So that's why point was you have to do a lot more with less. So you have to get very, very good with working with data and present insights and information and perspectives on with data. So that second is going to change for us. Third one is going to change the industry and will impact us as well. Is the influx? I foresee there'll be huge increase in the growth of and legalization of the gig economy. So all your contractors and freelancers, till last year, we are growing at about 19%, the gig market, economic market, but I see doubling in the next 5 years. So imagine working with a workforce which is so diverse. Some of them are working from office, some of them are contractors, some of them are freelancers, right? So how do you do their performance management? How do you build culture? How do you even pay them? Because you can't pay them salaries and still you have to be equitable, right? So that is going to be extremely game changer for us. Fourth point and the last one, I think, is the whole paradigm about employee engagement. Well, the engagement was focused so far on the employee. Now there is going to, shift to what I call as the whole self of the employee. The whole self will consist of him and also his surroundings, right? The employee surroundings. So his family, his hobbies, his interests, his own well-being, right? His children, his parents. So everything has to be encompassed in the whole self of the employee when you do that. So one quick example, Novartis. Now all of us have got learning and development platforms. Like in my company, you have LinkedIn. Other companies have Udemy, for example, and so on and so forth, where you can actually go and employees can go and log in and do some online courses. LinkedIn, after this COVID incident crisis happened, Novartis, they actually give access to Khan Academy, which is a learning platform for students, to all the children of the employees. How wonderful is that? Because they know they are sitting at home, they need help, and they're doing it. So one example of what I'm talking about, uh, involving the whole self of the employee while designing all our engagement programs. Final thing, I see that the way we will do employee engagement and the benefits of employees, right now we have a list of benefits that all employees can avail, that can get benefited from that. We'll be reaching a situation very shortly when there'll be a menu of benefits. Like when you go to a restaurant, you don't have to eat everything, right? You might choose a Chinese or you might choose an Indian, right? Similarly, an employee should be able to choose benefits from the menu, whatever suits them. That is where I think we're getting into in a short term or might be slightly longer term as well. And that's going to change fundamentally what we do in HR in terms of HR practices.
I think that's going to be a very interesting change.
Absolutely.
And the more flexibility we put in the hands of the employees, I think again, when we look at what drives people, and primarily we have these notions about motivators, and they're only notions. So when we look at reality, we will find that there are certain notions we have which do not work. And so the flexibility really puts the motivators in the hands of the employees as well. And that really, I also agree with you, that's going to be a game changer for sure. And being pushed into this situation that we are in, uh, with all the negativities that are there that people have been discussing, I also see that there's been a lot of realizations uh, in all forms, in general about life, as well as businesses have had a lot of new realizations which otherwise they wouldn't have even tried, because we do not like drastic changes, but we've been forced into this change, and we've
Absolutely.
learned, and I'm sure we've got a lot of positives as well and lessons from this change, which, as you said, would be surely implemented as we move to a post-lockdown period as well.
Sure. Every change also comes with some positives as well. You are right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so now let me see how much time we have. Around about 7 minutes as per time, and so we will try and take some questions. So by the way, there have been a lot of questions already in the chat box, and
Okay.
and I'm sure now more questions will come in. But I will take a few. I'm sure I won't be able to take all the questions, but I will take a few questions. There were some questions about, again, from a present situation perspective, and there were certain questions about recruitment. I've had, I don't know who this person is because I only see the name of the phone. Somebody has just written something about you, um, that you were this person's manager in Genpact, and but I don't know the name because I can't see the name here, and write some good things about you in the chat box. Okay, so let me start off with a question about it's. I think this is a personal question, but question applies to all of us. Maybe we can learn something from it. Shubhajit Datta asked almost 15 minutes back, how do you keep yourself so motivated and positive?
Tough question again. I I am normally positive. I look at. I think there are you can look at every incident, every instance in two different paradigms, or you can decide to be positive, you can decide to be negative. It is a choice you make every day in your life, at every situation. And in fact, when some things don't work for you, that is where you get the maximum learning, right? You don't learn from your successes, you actually learn from your failures. So that's the way I see it. That I don't see it as failures, I see it as a great learning opportunity, and that keeps me positive. And when I look at everything, even if I look at a situation like this, COVID situation, where it's really unprecedented, I always try to think what positive might come out of that, right? So so that's one mindset, Shubhajit and Zubin, that keeps me going, looking at things positively.
All right, so Shubhajit just confirmed he was the one who wrote about you.
Okay, hi Shubhajit.
All right, so let me ask you the next question. This comes from Shayani Dhar. So she's asking, what are the criteria that you might be following or people should follow at this point in time to monitor the performance of employees? I mean, from a leadership perspective, how do you look at monitoring performance? Is there some other term? Is there a way that you can think of at this particular point of time when there's a lockdown and people are working from home?
Yeah, great question. We have to completely rethink the way we monitor performance, right? Unfortunately, we have done things in a certain way, right? Which not work anymore. When it's a certain way, right? You give them a task, right? And you also make sure that the people are sitting at their desk for 9 hours and doing it. You're actually even look at the laws, Zubin. We it says that you have to spend. I'm talking about laws in my state, right? That the person has to sit work for 40 hours, right? It doesn't talk about how much productivity the person would give. That is, I think, a fundamentally a flawed way of doing it. And I think this situation has, that's one positive out of this, completely taken the mask out of that flawed situation. For me, it's always been like that. Organization should not monitor or send a police person against, to see if the person is, how much time the person is sitting on a desk or not, right? We should rate our employees on the basis of their productivity. It doesn't matter how much time the person took. What the person has delivered is should be more critical, right? That's number one. And you have to build our entire performance management system around it. Secondly, I'll make it quick because a lot of lack of time. We have to, the only way we can do it is that we have to build a culture of accountability within the organization, right? Each one of us as employees should be accountable for our work and should be accountable for how our work impacts others, right? So we talk about building accountability, right? And we also talk about, okay, let's send somebody to a training class to build accountability. I fundamentally believe that you can't build accountability, right? You can build accountable people. So let's focus on that, build accountable people. Once you have done that, you would not need a supervisor who's keeping on eyes on you all the time, right? It should be results oriented. It should where what you deliver should matter, not how much time you spend on your desk.
So I guess we need to create more entrepreneurs and also work on those lines, isn't it? So entrepreneurs would be accountable for their own work, and it's more of performance orientation. It's not about calculating the number of hours.
You said it perfectly. My frustration, again, I'm very telling more passionate about, is that even now after the COVID started, there are some organizations that actually put a timing app on the people's systems. When they're working from home, they know when they've logged in, when they've logged out. That I think is very, very regressive kind of a culture.
Right, absolutely. I'm sure that doesn't work in terms of performance anyway. I mean, logging in
It
and
doesn't.
logging out. Yeah, I've experienced that in the IT industry. I was in the IT industry before I left and started my business in 2010. So we used to have this login, log out system. So people used to use others' identity cards. Then they started the biometric system, and people always had ways to bypass in some way or the other. So that's not what
Absolutely.
really, and doesn't mean that I log in with my fingerprint and I'm working, right? So at the end of the day, it's performance, and I think that metric will definitely work, and we will, even in India, we should ideally proceed and progress towards that.
Absolutely. Can't agree more.
So, Debashish, before we close, I really want to thank you. We are out of time right now. There were a lot of questions. I also read through the questions and found that many of the questions were already answered based on the discussions we've had. So, I only tried to ask a few which may have not been covered in our discussion. Thank you so much for giving us the time, the insights, the experiences that you have shared. I think there are lots of suggestions and definitely the stories we will take away from here and we should be able to use in our life. Thank you so much, Debashish, and I hope we can again connect sometime for another round of discussion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Zubin. Thank you, NHRDN Kolkata Chapter, and then thank you all the participants.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
joining. Thank you.
And yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. And our next HR Speak Live will be next Saturday. So see you there. Thanks, Debashish, and
Thank you.
we'll keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Bye.